Everyone, can I ask you to please take your seat? Good morning and welcome to the last day of Masterworks. These three gentlemen who will present today are the 343rd, 344th, and 345th Masterworks presentations this year. This year, yeah, 3 or 4. We do one a day. This year we will see 343, 4, 5. This is an amazing achievement that these kids pull off each year. We have done for it's 29 or 30 years. We're not sure what it is. We've forgotten a birthday somewhere. But it's a great honor to step back into this process and see all the amazing work that the kids do here. So to tell you a little bit more about the Masterworks program and to do a land acknowledgement for us, I'm going to call up Jen Henriksen, our assistant head of school, and the woman who shepherds the kids through this program. Thanks very much.
Hey, Jen.
Hello, everyone, and welcome, especially to all of our guests today and family who've come. It's really special that we get to meet all together and learn from our students. The teachers are quite happy about that as we're writing report cards. So, I first would like to do a land acknowledgement and appreciate that we are on the unceded territory of the Squamish Nation, and we have the privilege of calling this island our home and where we go to work every day and where our kids get to learn and to play. So it's really important that we recognize that we are sharing this land. The other thing I wanted to say is that we had a professional development time with a woman from the Squamish Nation, and she said it's important for everyone to recognize their ancestors just as they do when they do acknowledgements. So my ancestors came from Denmark and England and Scotland, and I was born in the Anishinaabe territory of Ontario. So long way for everyone to end up here, and it's interesting, all of our students this year have written a land acknowledgement during Truth and Reconciliation Day, and we have done those acknowledgements usually 3 times a week, sometimes less, through the year, which has been really nice to have a consistent recognition of this. And so, bringing us to Masterworks. This is the culmination of a lot of hard work by our grade 9s. In September, they come to us and we ask them, what do you want to do for your Masterworks? And we get all sorts of wacky answers, but we also get some really interesting and widely varied answers. And this is very true of this year. We go from Alzheimer's to agriculture to manatees and to making a film. So huge variation. Sometimes we have to massage it a little so that they can get a lot of depth out of the topic. But they have all written a 15 to 40 page paper, which is incredible for anyone, never mind a 14-year-old. And we'll now get the best of that paper and be up here telling you about it for the next 20 to 30 minutes, and then we'll have the question and answer period after that. The students we have some traditions here. The first one is that students touch this statue when they come up for good luck. It's called the team, and yes, it represents someone taking flight and going off into the future, but it's also the team of people who support the student, and that is all of their classmates, yes, and the teachers here and the faculty are assigned each to 1 or 2 students, and we have external advisors who are experts in their field and who can guide and mentor our students through the process. We are hugely thankful for that volunteering. It inspires the kids and also keeps them on track. So it's a wonderful thing that our community joins together with us to embody this Masterworks program. We are also online right now, so we have a live feed, and We've had advisors come into that and relatives far away, but it is also going to be archived on our YouTube channel. So you can see any of this, any of the other Masterworks that have been happening. And it's a wonderful way for the kids actually, the younger kids even too, to look back and say, oh, I think I might want to do it on this. And I will say, hey, take a look at 2015. This kid did it on something similar. So it's a really great way for us to look at all that stuff. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome up Mr. Dorian Robertson.
Many people's first thought when they think of fire is Smokey the Bear and how only you can prevent wildfires. But is that true? Or is it more than an individual effort? My name is Dorian Robertson, and my Masterworks is about the past, the present, and the future of wildfires. For me, my interest in fire goes back to when I was 6 years old. It was the summer of 2016 and I was on Hornby Island. Every year with my cousins on Hornby, we clean up our family property, and one of the jobs is burning large piles of brush, which gets yeah, it's me and my friend, which gets stacked there by other people. This time the job fell on my 6-year-old shoulders, or more accurately, my dad's, but he made me do it. And as I lit that match and set that bonfire burning, I discovered how it felt to be a pyromaniac. After this trip, I set things on fire as often as I was allowed to by my parents. Okay, so let me fix this. Just give me a minute, yeah. There you go, thank you. Better. So, where was I? After this trip, I set things on fire as often as I was allowed to by my parents. My father, who also enjoys setting fires, taught me many things about fire, such as how to light a match and flick it in the same motion. We also got a fire pit for our backyard, and we lit fires in it whenever we had people over. I still am intrigued by fire to this day. Then, in the summer of 24, I began reading a book called Fire Weather by suggestion of my grandma. Thank you, Nana. Once I started this book, I couldn't stop. Overall, it was an amazing read because of the questions it brought up for me. Can we solve this fire problem? How could we do it? This book talked about how much more dangerous fires had gotten due to climate change and the fuel built up in the woods. This book left me with more questions than answers, so I resolved to research them at some point. 1 month later, I'm freaking out, trying to find a Masterworks topic. I thought of several ideas, but I thought they all were bad and discarded them in short order. Eventually, I remembered the book that I had read earlier in the summer, Fire Weather. I realized that by combining my love of fire and the information Fire Weather provided me with, I could make a Masterworks project that not only I could do, but I would somewhat enjoy doing. Yeah. I was also hearing about wildfires more and more in the news, so I knew this topic would be important and relevant for a lot of people. There are many aspects of fire and how humans interact with it that I'll cover in this presentation. First, we'll look at the science of fire, including the fire triangle and how combustion works. Then we'll explore Native American fire management and how they lived in balance with fire. Next, we'll dive into fire phenomenons, like the fire tornado, followed by my interview with Willem, a firefighter and former IPS student. After that, we'll cover the 4 stages of wildfire and the destruction they can cause. We'll then look at how climate change is making wildfires more intense and more difficult to control. Finally, we'll discuss ways to reduce wildfire impacts, including insights from Deborah Zermanek, and wrap up with their conclusion. Now let's move into the science of fire. Fire needs 3 key ingredients to light and grow. Without any one of them, a fire can't start or continue. While fire is a natural source of heat and light, it can become destructive if not controlled, burning vast areas and endangering lives. Can anyone in the audience tell me one of these ingredients? There may be candy involved. All right, start with the grade 6s. Kai, yeah.
Like something, air, oxygen.
Oxygen is correct. You can come up and get a pack of Mentos.
But you can't eat it now?
You can't eat it now, you have to eat it after. I know. Yes, oxygen supports the chemical reaction known as combustion, breaking down fuel and releasing heat and light. Without oxygen, this process stops. That's why smothering a fire, cutting off its oxygen, puts it out. There are still 2 more. And, let's see, grade 7s now. Liam is looking at me, so Liam.
There's also heat.
Heat is correct. You can come up and get a pack. Wildfires begin with an ignition source, always started by heat. This can come from natural causes such as lightning or human activities like smoking, power line sparks, or campfires. Once burning, a fire sustains itself by generating its own heat. We still have 1 more. Can anyone? Tovin from the grade 8s. Pardon? No, it's not water. It's not water. Okay, grade 9s. Calum.
Like a fuel source?
Fuel source? Yes, that's correct. You can come up and get some Mentos. Fuel gives fire something, oh, that's loud. Fuel gives fire something to burn. Trees, shrubs, grass, leaves, or even buildings. Dry fuels burn better than wet ones, and the type and amount of fuel affect how hot and how fast fire grows and burns. Even slow-burning fuel, like cedar logs, can feed a powerful fire if there's enough of it. This is why wildfire danger is increased. Decades of fire suppression have led to fuel buildup, giving fires more to consume. All three elements, fuel, oxygen, and heat, are equally essential. Remove one and a fire can't survive. Just letting you guys know, there will be more quizzes if you pay attention, and there's more chances to earn Mentos. So, it's candy on the line. When I went to Mount Currie on a school trip, I was intrigued by some of the ways the indigenous population there used and started fires. When we all gathered around an unlit fire, as people do, one of the First Nations people did the last thing I expected. They brought out a massive blowtorch and lit the fire with it. This intrigued me and made me research more about Native American fire management. While modern scientists have made a lot of progress in understanding how wildfires start and spread, most of their efforts have gone into preventing and suppressing fires. In contrast, in the early history of North America, Native Americans used, respected, and even revered fire. They used controlled fire for food and heat, but also as a tool. They set fires to help them hunt by scaring animals out of a bush with a blaze into the open, where they could easily chase it down and kill it for food. Native Americans also maintained tall grass prairies so that they could burn the grass and drive animals in a specific direction. They saw the advantages of letting fires burn and not putting them out, therefore reducing the buildup of flammable materials and fire starters in the forest floor. Fire was also used for agriculture. Notable examples include burning down targeted sections of the Appalachian forest to encourage growth of oak and chestnut trees, which would provide nut crops for them. In the Great Lakes region, controlled burns were used to clear out the understory and promote blueberry growth. A controlled burn is a fire started in a section of woodland in a controlled way to clear out fuel for future wildfires. They also used fire to clear out underbrush, making it easier to hunt and easier to travel through dense forests. Native Americans knew that fire was an important part of our environment that could help humans as well if they knew how to harness it. On to our next section, fire phenomenons. In this section, you can earn more candy, but it's at the end. Wildfires are more than dangerous enough on their own, but they can also cause special phenomenons that aid the destruction. These phenomenons are often incredibly rare, but some occur very often. There are many different types of wildfire phenomenons, and we will be running through several today. Also, remember to pay attention, because in this section, I'll be picking 8 volunteers at the end, and each one is a chance to earn candy. The first one, the fire whirl or fire tornado. This is working. A fire whirl, also known as a fire tornado, is a spinning vortex of fire and ash caused by intense heat and heavy turbulent winds. It happens because when hot air rises rapidly and cooler air rushes in, it occasionally creates a rotating column, as you see in the video, which develops into a fire tornado. The dangers of one of these fire tornadoes is how incredibly destructive they are, how fast they move, and how unpredictable they are. This is a bit of a mouthful, pyrocumulus and pyrocumulonimbus. Forgive me if I mispronounced that. These clouds are large, thunderstorm-like clouds formed from the smoke of wildfires and moisture. This is caused by fires heating and lifting moist air, leading to condensation and cloud formation. The dangers of this phenomenon is the fact that they can produce lightning, worsening the fire by igniting new spots. Spotting. Spotting was when embers carried by the wind ignite new fires ahead of the main fire, allowing wildfires to jump rivers. Yeah, that's a short video. Allowing wildfires to jump rivers and sometimes go for miles. This is dangerous because it makes it impossible to contain a wildfire to one area, because these embers can spread the fire so easily and unpredictably. Exploding trees. This is the right spot, yeah. This phenomenon is when a tree or stump explodes as a result of internal saps or resins becoming superheated. This is very dangerous to firefighters because it can cause injuries and even deaths. It can also help accelerate fire spread. Yeah. A firestorm is an intense and self-sustaining fire with its own wind system. Fire weather, the book I mentioned earlier in my presentation, partially focuses on fires creating their own wind systems, that is, firestorms. This happens because the heat from a large fire creates strong updrafts, because heat rises, which has the effect of the fire pulling in more oxygen and therefore sustaining the fire. The danger of this effect is that it makes fires much more dangerous, and firestorms are nearly impossible to control. Smoke inversion. Smoke inversion is when a layer of warm air traps cooler air and smoke near the ground. This happens because at night or early in the morning, the ground cools quickly, and the air close to the ground cools more quickly than the air above. This causes a temperature inversion, which means that the warm air acts like a lid for the cooler air underneath in smoke. This means that the smoke can't rise, so instead it spreads out parallel to the ground. This is dangerous because it covers the ground area in thick, choking smoke, which is a huge safety hazard, and also gives the impression that a fire is less dangerous than it actually is. This doesn't work. Okay, here. No. Crown fire. This fire phenomenon is caused when fire rapidly spreads to the treetops as opposed to along the ground. This occurs when fires in the ground gain intensity, which leads to flames climbing the trees and spreading throughout the canopy. The danger of crown fires is how fast they move and how hard they are to suppress, as firefighters can't reach the treetops without special equipment such as ladders or helicopters. Last one. Flashover is a fire phenomenon where most of the exposed materials in an enclosed area ignite nearly simultaneously. This occurs when the surface of these materials reach their auto-ignition temperature, releasing flammable gases and causing a rapid transition to a fully developed fire. This is very dangerous because it releases an immense burst of radiant heat, which is very dangerous. It is the leading cause of death of firefighters while fighting these fires. All right. So these are 8 different wildfire phenomena that have influenced fire behavior, and almost never for the better. These phenomena all advance wildfires and make them much more deadly and destructive. So does anyone want to guess? Starting with the fire tornado. Let's see. The fire tornado. Oh, I need to get out of the way. Say. What do they do? I'm going to say one. Dean. I'm asking, no, it's a fire tornado. I'm asking like what it does.
It's like a tornado with fire because the heat rises and the cold air comes in and it spins around.
Okay, good. Okay, I'll take the pointer. I don't think that's exactly how it happened, but, oh, no, that's it. Go, come on. You guys are welcome. So just take your mentor. All right, after that, now we have the pyrocumulus clouds. Does anyone want to guess for that? Pyrocumulus clouds. No one? No one wants Mentos? All right, Rowan, go.
I think it's caused by like the smoke from the fire going up and meeting like damp moisture in the air.
That is, yeah, that's it. All right, go. So you can have Mentos. You're going to give me some of those. Okay, next one is spotting. Can anyone tell me what this means? Lizzie.
It's like where it's like there are little like spots of fire like away from the main fire that like spread more easily.
Yeah, take a Mento. All right. The next one is exploding trees. Yeah, I guess I have to do a grade 9 now. Harper, sure.
It's when the sap and the resin inside of the tree gets so hot that it explodes.
Yes, that's correct. The next one is the firestorm. Can anyone know? What is it? The firestorm. AJ.
I think because like the fire gets carried around by the wind, and when the wind come in, the wind carries more oxygen, boosting the fire.
Okay, yeah, it's better than I explained it. You can take a Mento. AJ, you want a Mento? Or? Okay, you're coming up. So next we have smoke inversion. Can anyone tell me about this one? Alara?
It's where the smoke spreads, and the heat traps the heat up in higher traps the cold air and the smoke close to the ground.
Yeah, just take a Mento. All right, and next we have crown fires. Maya. Yeah, come get a Mento. And then our very last one, this is your last chance to earn candy, the flashover phenomenon. Who wants it? Liam, I've already let you do one. Put your hand down. Stella K.
It's where multiple items in that one area, they all bust at the same time, creating this really environment.
Yeah, come get a Mento. And, nice, where's the stick go? Put the stick there. You want the stick? Yeah, okay, let's have the stick. All right, hearing and learning about all these different wildfire phenomenons, I knew I needed to talk to an expert to find out more. This is my interview with Willem. On February 13th this year, I met with a firefighter named Willem, who also happens to be an alumni of IPS. He has worked for BC Wildfire since 2021 and currently works in Pemberton from February to October every year. He taught me a lot about the firefighter program in our interview, and I'm going to be sharing what I learned today. Firefighters, or at least Willem's unit, are deployed for up to 14 days to suppress fire and protect natural resources such as timber. When he isn't working on fires, he shows up to work, does 2 hours of physical training and conditioning, and then does administrative work until noon. At noon, they eat their lunch, and then they move outside to do some field work, such as building helipads, chainsaw work, and delivering water. When they work on wildfires, they think about the fire triangle: heat, fuel, and oxygen, and how to remove one of these factors, which effectively suppresses the fire. Removing fuel from the path of the fire is often the most common way and most effective way of doing this. He said, one of the best ways of doing this is to fight fire with fire, meaning to utilize controlled burns before the wildfire hits, which takes away the fuel the wildfire would have used. While this method is often considered controversial, as you're literally burning down the area you're trying to save from being burned in the first place, if pulled off correctly, it can stop the wildfire from going even further, or if not, significantly slow it down. The way that Willem's team most often starts controlled burns with an item known as a drip torch, which can set an easily controllable burn. I learned a lot about the day-to-day life of firefighters from Willem, and I also learned a ton about effective wildfire suppression. What I didn't know as much about that Willem helped clear up for me was the 4 different stages that a wildfire is categorized into. Wildfires move through 4 key stages: ignition, growth, fully developed, and decay. Each stage affects how dangerous a wildfire is and how firefighters respond. Ignition. This is when a heat source, like lightning or human activity, sparks fire. The Fort McMurray fire, for example, began with metal on train tracks creating a spark. At this early point, the fire is small, making it with low heat and flames, making it the easiest time for a firefighter to contain it. Once this fire spreads beyond its point of origin, it enters the next stage: growth. The fire gets much hotter and begins to spread. Factors like dry vegetation and closed-off environments can speed up this phase. Forests, in particular, create dangerous conditions, including flashover, when everything in an enclosed space ignites almost instantly. This is extremely dangerous for firefighters. After flashover occurs, the fire becomes fully developed. This is the most intense and destructive phase by far. Fires in this stage can reach temperatures over 2,000 Fahrenheit, like the infamous Chinchaga fire. These wildfires move fast, destroy everything in their path, and are especially dangerous in the wildland-urban interface, the WUI, where homes meet forested areas. Thick smoke, heat, and limited visibility makes the stage almost impossible to fight directly. And our last stage is decay. Once the fire runs out of fuel, it enters the decay phase. This can be the longest phase, but it's still risky. Winds and leftover fuel can cause flare-ups, which can fully restart the fire and make a firefighter's job even harder to do. To better understand the transformation and destruction of wildfires in the past 100 years, we'll look at 2 powerful cases that highlight the devastating destruction caused by separate wildfires in the same area. 2 separate wildfires that occurred 100 years apart: the Griffith Park wildfire, which occurred in 1933, and the recent Palisades wildfire, which is one of the infamous California wildfires that happened earlier this year. Both of these wildfires happened in California, more specifically LA, which helps us single out the one variable that we want to test, which is how much more dangerous they've gotten over the past 100 years. Can I have the pokey stick thing? Thank you. Much appreciated. All right, so when we compare these stats, several things stand out. First of all, they're almost 100 years apart, right? And they occurred in the same area, Los Angeles. But when we look at the acres, we realize that Griffith Park, the acres burned, is only 47 acres. Well, the Palisades fire is 38 times that, 23,707 acres burned. But in the next section, it's somewhat unexpected because Griffith Park actually had more deaths than the Palisades fire. However, there's a really good reason for this. Well, the Griffith Park fire response was a bunch of untrained workers trying to fight the fire with shovels and sand. The response to the Palisades fire was a highly trained group of professionals, including CAL FIRE, local fire departments, and fire specialists. The Griffith Park fire burned 0 structures, while the Palisade fire destroyed 6,837. Now that we've seen the growing destructive power of wildfires, it's important to look at the major driving force behind the growing intensity: climate change. How exactly does a shift in climate influence wildfire behavior? Climate change is making wildfires more frequent, more intense, and harder to control. While factors like land use and vegetation also play a role, rising global temperatures, about 1 Celsius since the late 1800s due to human activity, are a major driver. Warmer, drier conditions extend fire seasons, drought vegetation, and create ideal conditions for fast-moving ground fires. Wildfires don't just result from climate change, they also worsen it. Burning forests release carbon dioxide, fueling further warming in a dangerous cycle. In short, climate change is turning wildfires into a growing threat. So the key questions become, how can we stay safe and what can we do to reduce their impact? Well, in an interview with Deborah Zermanek, I learned many things about how you and I can adapt to wildfires. Deborah Zermanek is a highly qualified forester that works for a company called Blackwell, which is based in Vancouver. She shared that adapting and mitigating to the threat of wildfires requires action and looks different depending if it's on the individual, community, and government level. She shared a bit about what each group can do, but I'm curious to know how much each of you already know about what each group can do. So many of you have already noticed the board we have over there, and that's what we're going to be using in this section. So I'm just going to bring that over here quick. I forgot the mic. It's fine. There's no more chance to get candy. I'll give you some at the end. Okay. Can everyone see this? Yeah? 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 Okay. I might actually bring it closer. Okay, so how this is going to work is I'm going to call up 18 volunteers that each get a sheet of this paper, and then they look at the thing that's in the front and they try and group it into which part they think it belongs in. So does anyone want to do it? All right, Caden, Kai, Naya, Amaya, Wyatt, Julian, Lizzie, Maya, Liam, Theo. Liam already went. Okay, let's do Stella instead. And then, so everyone that have been called can come up and grab one. So Aiden, Tovin, no one, okay. Jenna, Jua, Rowan, Neva. And I think I'm just gonna wait, see if anyone else. Pardon? Maybe at the end, Wait, were you counting? I think did I call up too many?
It's okay, we can go back.
Okay, I'm actually gonna take these.
I'm just trying to sit right here. I'll give you
I don't know, maybe you got a guess. Okay, do we need 2 more people? We need 2 more volunteers. Huh? Who? What? We need 2 more volunteers. Amaya and Henry. I've already called grade 9s. Okay. What? I can't tell you that. I'm really sorry. I can't do it. Yeah, sure. Check this one. Oh, which one is this one? Okay, so now I'm. Oh my. I got it. There we go. Fixed it. Okay, I'm just gonna leave it here. I'm leaving it here. Can you guys just not see the thing anymore?
No, I can't.
Okay, we're leaving it here. Better? Sorry. All right, so our first section, government level, has all of these. So I'm going to go over to the board and I'm going to see how well you guys did. Yep, that's there. And yeah, so you guys got 4. Wait, there's more? Okay, sorry. Yep, that's there. Forgot about that. So you guys actually did really well on that one. You got 5 out of the 7 that's supposed to be. So I'm going to go through those quick. So I'm going to choose a few of these that are really important to talk about. I think one of the most important ones is the forest and debris management, because using controlled burns to reduce excess fuel. This is something that's been ignored for a very long time, to be specific, almost the past 100 years. And over time, fuel has built up a ton, and it means that fires are getting much more intense because of it. So that one's very important. Another important one is cutting emissions, because that helps fight against climate change, and it's one of the main causes of all these wildfires. The next section is the community actions. So let's see how well you guys did in this one. Yeah, that's one. Education programs, yes, I saw that, but I have to find it now. Here it is. All right, so you guys got, it's more, okay, sorry, Fireworks. Nope, it's not it, not that one, yeah. Just gonna take that one down quick. No, it's not. Oh, yes. Yes, so you guys actually did really, okay, so you guys actually did really well in that one, much better than I did. So, yeah, you got 4 out of 5, which is excellent. So the ones of these I feel like are the most important to talk about are evacuation planning, because it's really important. It's really important to have a plan, because it gives everyone a greater chance of getting out from a wildfire alive. Another important one is fire defense tools, because you can install community sprinklers and water tanks, which also increases your chances a ton in the event of a wildfire. Another important one is education programs, teaching residents about wildfire safety and preparedness. An example of one of these education programs is Fire Smart BC, which is a provincial initiative which is aimed at reducing the risk of wildfire damage to homes, communities, and forests across British Columbia. It empowers residents, municipalities, and Indigenous communities to take proactive steps in wildfire prevention and preparedness through education and training. Now we have the individual actions. Let's see how well you guys did in this, and let's see if I can get all of them. All right, it's not my fault. Okay, I'm actually just gonna, yes. Keep fire tools in hand, maintain space. I think this one was fair. So you guys again did great in that one. You're actually much more educated in this than I thought. Okay. So the ones of these I think are the most important are make an evacuation plan and fight climate change, not to make any of these seem less important. They're all great things to do. Making an evacuation plan is important because, as I mentioned in the community section, if your family makes an evacuation plan, you can have a place to meet after you escape your house, and that is very important. Fighting climate change is one of the best things you can do to fight against these wildfires, because reducing your carbon footprint reduces the amount of damage and heat the wildfires can do. Fighting wildfires and the climate change that fuels them takes teamwork. Governments can drive systematic change, communities can spread awareness and take local action, and individuals can make practical choices to protect their homes and the environment. Even small actions matter. Carpooling, donating, and planting a tree can make a difference, and we all contribute. We've seen how wildfires are becoming more intense and more frequent. Yes, climate change plays a major role in that, but so do our actions. My hope is that some of you feel inspired to take action, even in small ways. When you head home tonight, if any part of this resonated with you, talk to your family about it. Start the conversation. Even here in Bowen or Vancouver, we're not immune to the threat of wildfires, and being prepared matters. Awareness is the first step, and having a plan can make all the difference. So maybe Smokey was only partly right. It's not just only you who can prevent wildfires, it's all of us. Together we write the next chapter in the story of fire. And for my acknowledgements, I'd like to acknowledge my parents for, well, making me food and I'm doing my Masterworks and keeping me on track, even when it's really annoying. My advisors, Pam and Dylan, for partially the same reason, keeping me on track, but also they just stayed with me the whole way, even when I may have missed a couple due dates. But not really. I'd like to acknowledge Deborah Zemanek and Willem Young for agreeing to interviews with me. They helped me out a ton. I'd also like to acknowledge my classmates for sometimes being quiet when I'm trying to work. I know. And I'd also like to thank me for doing this project, because honestly, none of you did this project, I did it. So I deserve the most acknowledgement. I'd also like to thank everyone else that assisted. I just forgot other people, I think, but thank you. And questions, anyone?
That was an
Fire?
excellent presentation, and we are now going into our question period. You guys have been an amazing audience so far, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions continuing. We are going to start with questions from the advisors. This is a mic for our online audience. It doesn't project your voice, but it means that online we can hear you, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Robertson, for an engaging, insightful, humorous, and just very well put together presentation here. You absolutely captivated the audience and you made them feel engaged. And I think everyone can walk out of here today with a tool that you've provided us for what to do, whether that's reassurance or something to do while we're at home to make an emergency evacuation plan. Or something of that nature. I think you're going to get a lot of questions today about some current events that are happening, so I'll leave that for the audience members here. My question for you is, earlier this year, we did a unit that involved connections to nature. It was inspired by the First Nations individuals, and it was planned by them, and one of the things that we connected with in nature was the forests. And I remember that you mentioned that they were profound and a calming place to be. Mm-hmm. My first question is, how has your perspective of that changed over the course of doing this Masterworks project? Has your perspective on things like nature specifically altered because of your involvement with it, especially in a wildfire context?
It's a tough question. But yeah, I'd have to say my perspective has changed. I've always felt much more calm in the forest, but now I realized how important they actually are, because they're carbon sinks and they reduce CO2 emissions. And when they're even more important to be protected, because when they do get burned down, that just makes climate change worse.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing your perspective on that. My follow-up question to that is similar. How has your relationship with fire changed now that you've gone through such a intensive process of researching it for your Masterworks project?
Okay, well, it's changed. I guess I no longer want to burn down as many things anymore, but I also see the use in burning down things, because controlled burns very useful, and just as long as we keep because fires are a natural part of our environment, even if they are dangerous, because they have to be allowed to burn stuff sometimes, just to reduce the fuel in the woods. But yeah, that's how it's changed.
Thank you very much for your insight, Mr. Robertson. Again, very well done. I'm going to leave the floor open for other individuals, but if they don't ask the questions that I'm thinking of, you'll hear from me again.
Okay, that's very good to know.
Might not be done. Mr. Robertson, that was phenomenal. Thank you for this. It's a really, really important message. So relevant, and your presentation was really clear. You did incredible teaching. The visuals, I have to admit, kind of freaked me out. I don't watch the news. I hear about fires. My son is fighting fires. But seeing, I know he's cutting down trees, and seeing that tree explode and fire going everywhere really did freak me out. So for me, it's really personal now. Around safety for my own family members, and also how close we have a local fire now. So my question is that you spoke a lot about fires in general, and in your paper you researched about fires around the world. Like, you had a lot in your paper about especially the Fort Mac fire, but fires in Australia, and the big fires, and it all felt a little far away. Right?
Yeah.
And now we have, on Bowen, we don't have fires. We're not really worried about it. We live in a rainforest. But today there's a fire in Squamish, and it's affecting us in that our kids can't go drive through Squamish tomorrow. And again, I've got a family member fighting that fire, and I know Willem is on that fire today too. So I guess my question is, knowing this, that now it's personal and it's local and it's really, really relevant, what is your message to us, and what should we do? What do we need to know, and what should we do?
Okay, well, again, as I said in my conclusion, we're not immune to wildfires, even if you're in Bowen, even if you're in Vancouver. This Squamish fire just further shows that, right? Mm-hmm. So I think what we need to do is we just need to keep fighting climate change. We need to acknowledge Indigenous practices and follow them, because they're honestly so good and so useful. And then, yeah, we just have to be better, Yeah.
Thank you for that. And one thing that really struck me in your presentation was about the importance of community and government and things. And I feel like we're, as community and government, we're kind of one step behind all the time. So just today, they banned campfires in Squamish. And I know that this fire that started was human caused in a campground that I think you've been in that campground before.
Alice Lake?
Near Alice Lake. It's just south of there. So what do you think government should be doing if we ban a campfire the day after a massive wildfire is now started by a human?
I think just banning campfires immediately after that's not really going to help. So you already have a massive fire on your hands. I think we need to focus more on preventing fires during the fire seasons, because even though they're getting way earlier now than they were before, we have to take into account for that, and we have to adapt. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Okay.
Mr. Robertson, this
Yes, Jen?
is a question from your other, not really an advisor, but the alumni that you interviewed, Willem Young. So Willem is also on that Squamish fire right now, but we talked to him this morning and he wished you luck, which is great, before he headed out. And he's actually one of the chainsaw operators that cuts down the burning trees. So yeah, that was quite an intense video that you showed about that. He has a question for you about what is the most efficient way to fight a fire. You mentioned this, but I'd like you to reiterate it.
Yeah, the most effective way to fight a fire, as Willem said, is with fire. Controlled burns, while they might seem very controversial, they're very useful, and I truly believe they're the best way that we can fight fires.
So part two of that question is, why might the public not like these tactics of fighting fire, and how can we better educate people of its necessity and benefits?
Okay, well, as I said, it's very controversial, because fighting fire with fire is you're actually burning down the forest that you want to prevent from being burned down. But the reason why this should be more seen in the public eye is because even if you do burn down that part of the forest, it's natural, and it will prevent the fire from spreading closer to the town.
Yep. Great answer, thank you. Questions from the floor, starting with grade 6.
Oh, wait, I'm just clarifying, if you do ask a question, you don't get candy. But
like, do you think this project will impact, like, your future or, like, what you're going to do,
No.
like, later in life? Okay.
I actually do think that BC Fire Smart program would welcome you into their midst. You might be able to get a job.
Excellent project, Mr. Robertson. Deborah Zemanek, who you interviewed, is a dear friend of mine, and she actually does education programs for communities, and she teaches them how to maintain the space around their homes. So I know you wrote this in your paper, can you elaborate a little bit on like what advice she might be giving to people in communities to keep their lots and their homes safe from fire?
well, as I said in my presentation, she wants you to remove all the flammable stuff near your house. So you essentially have a mini fire break so the fire can't jump through the bushes, through the hedges, through the trees. So just 10 meters with no plants near your house. I admit I am very guilty of this. We have a lot of plants, but it's still a good thing to do.
Yeah, that's hard for a lot of people, I'm sure, with landscaping, like right beside your house. But obviously it's very important too. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Robertson, that was a fantastic presentation. You managed to both make me laugh and freak me out, so well done. Wildfire is something we all are having to live with. I think if it hasn't touched you yet, it will. Very recently, I've had close friends lose their houses and their community. And something that really struck me was the disconnect between the ability for government to support the community in taking part in defending their own livelihoods. I wonder if you were the government, how would you empower communities to protect their own communities against this threat?
Well, if I was the government, honestly, the government's in a bit of a tough situation right now, I will admit, with Trump and all, but if I was the government, I would provide money for people that lost their homes so they could rebuild. And it'd also help education programs so that they could learn how to rebuild, how to prevent fires, and just give them more knowledge, you know?
Okay, thank you.
Julia.
Very good presentation, Mr. Robertson.
Appreciate it.
I couldn't tell if this was kind of nice question, but you obviously only did it on fire, but that's a big part of like climate change. Did this change how you're gonna do certain things that'll impact the environment in better ways?
It'll definitely change how I'm gonna act in the future. I might even donate to climate charities. Like, it's definitely gonna change just how I live my day-to-day life. I actually need some water, so yeah.
Yeah. That was a lovely presentation, very entertaining, interactive. Thank you so much, Mr. Robertson. I wanted to ask, with this project, if you were to take an action, what would that look like?
That's a very good question. If I were to take action, I'd probably, I would say I'd try and become a firefighter, but my mom's in the audience, so we're not gonna do that. And I don't know, I think I'd probably, as someone did say this, I'd probably try and do something for Fire Smart BC. And yeah, good question.
Really good job. I don't know if this was in your scope of research. It was just something I was wondering is if the wildfire's intensity were to double in the next 20 years, how would you redesign the wildfire response system?
How would I redesign that? Was this question ChatGPT'd? Okay, if wildfires were to double, I would say I'd cross that bridge when I come to it, because that would honestly not be ideal. But I'd focus on fighting climate change and controlled burns so we can scale that back and just do our best. Yeah.
Amazing presentation, Mr. Robertson. My question is on the phenomenons. So in LA, is that a type of phenomenon or is that just a wildfire? And what is an example of a phenomenon in recent times? Do you know?
In LA is actually I believe there's a lot of phenomenons going on there. LA is a firestorm. There's been spotting involved and a lot more, yeah. And yeah, there was a fire tornado as well.
Wonderful job, Mr. Robertson. Your presentation was so engaging. My question is, in such a vulnerable climate world today, what do you think individuals, communities, and governments' mindset should look like appropriately towards these fires?
I think individual communities and governments should be just knowing they're there, because as long as we know they're there and we know how, and we educate ourselves, then we'll know what we can do. And just if everyone contributes, that's 8 billion people, right? So that's a big change. So next question.
Amazing presentation. It was really interesting. I'm very impressed. My question is for you. If wildfires are getting worse with climate change, sorry, I wrote this down earlier. Do you think we should start planning for a future with fire instead of just trying to stop it? And if yes, what methods or ways do you think we could start doing that?
Well, I think we should definitely do a balance and modicum of that, because with fire, that would help us a ton, because we just include controlled burns, we'd let fire burn, and that would reduce the fuel buildup. But I don't ever think we can truly live with fire, because it's literally burning down our houses. So I feel like we need to do a balance of that.
Great presentation, Mr. Robertson. You've been talking a lot about how fire is so harmful to the environment and everything. Is there any ways that fire could also be good for the environment? It's a natural phenomenon, but is there any way that it could help the environment grow?
Yes. In my section about, okay, nope, I won't do that. In my section about Native American fire management, I mentioned a ton about how controlled burns and just how they lived with fire helped the environment grow better. how it made plants grow more, and then, yeah, just how it would just feel built up. I'm not calling you Max. I know you're some kind of dastardly.
Thank
Yes,
you, Mr.
Brad?
Robertson. Aside from the content, which was fascinating, I thought your delivery was excellent. You had a great presence, and even when things are falling off there, you made us feel really comfortable because you're able to laugh at yourself in the best possible way. So I think it's a really brilliant way. You're a great speaker, and I think it was Jen who made the comment that if you chose to do something like work with FireSmart, I think you'd be a great spokesman there.
Mm-hmm.
But I found this really useful, and I have a question for you. To be honest, I'm always looking for free advice in the role I have here. If we were to look at this as a school, there's lots there I think we could do, but where should we start in getting our school and the community right around here? You've been in the school for some years now. You have a good sense of where we're at maybe on this.
Okay, we're not supposed to be opening the Mentos packs yet. Okay, who's eating the Mentos?
That's such a sad sound.
Okay, wait. Is anyone actually eating the Mentos yet? We're not supposed to be eating the Mentos yet. Okay?
So yeah, if you could give us some idea of where we might start. I'm not sure if we're part of communities or individuals, but where we could do more work as a school on being FireSmart.
So I say for the school, I would emphasize the part of fighting climate change and also making the evacuation plan, just getting students to talk to their parents about that, because it would just bring a lot of peace of mind for people, and it would also be incredibly useful.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
This has been an okay, Carrie.
Because my question is relevant to everyone. I'm wondering, and this has happened to me before, what should you do if you come across a fire?
What should you do?
Like,
I would
who
say,
should you go fight it yourself?
Are you saying
Try and
you're,
extinguish it
are
with
you
your...
saying you're like trained or not?
No. You're just like a regular, not
I'd say it's
trained
like-
firefighter, and you're driving along the road, or you're like out on a hike or something, and you come across like a smoking area of land. It's not like a full-on fire, but you come across something that's like smoking. What should you do?
Well, I'd say call the fire response, and then, yeah. and
Is
then
there a
just-
number in BC that we should look up that you can call?
I believe there is. I believe there may be.
911.
Yes, 911.
Okay, great.
Correct,
So you
correct.
just call
The fire
911.
trucks, yes.
Awesome.
Fire trucks.
Thank you.
I just want to add to that because, again, my son was telling me this. They were in an area, somebody saw smoke off, and it just looked like, oh, maybe somebody's just doing a backyard burn. I don't know. And they called 911, and it turned out it turned into a massive fire by the time, like, somebody then went to investigate. And even if it's not like an emergency in the moment, they will redirect the call. So if you don't have a number for wherever, wildfire, then you can just call 911 and they will redirect you. But it ended up being a relevant, important call.
Really important information today, presented incredibly well, Mr. Robertson. So can we give him a huge round of applause? So we pushed question period pretty far, but we are going to have a 10-minute break and come back at 10 minutes after 10 to listen to Mr. Oliver Piccolo talking about ecosystems and aquariums. So 10 minutes, everyone. welcome back. I have an important announcement to make before we start our next Masterworks presentation, and it is that Mr. Dorian Robertson has met all the requirements of the Masterworks program.
Thank you.
So for those of you that have just joined us, I want to give you a little bit of background on the Masterworks program. This is the culmination of a year of work by the grade 9s, and they usually start thinking about what they're going to do for their Masterworks when they're in grade 6. So when you see all of these presentations over this week when the grade 9s become teachers, which is pretty nice for us, it's a really good idea to, if you're a student here at IPS, to start thinking about what you might like to do. All the grade 9s have written incredible 15 to 40 page papers. That is not a small feat for anyone, never mind if you're 14. So we're really impressed with the presentations that they have for us because it's the best of their essays, and we get to really celebrate them in the things that they've learned. So they usually have a 20 to 30 minute presentation, and then we have a question period after that. You will see them touch this statue as they come up here, and that's for good luck. It's called the team because we are very, very grateful to the people that support our students through this process, and that's their family, of course, their faculty advisor, and then we have external advisors that are experts in their field, and they can mentor and guide our students through the process. So we're really grateful for everyone who helps out in this way to really have our grade 9 shine today. So I would like to call up Mr. Oliver Piccolo right now.
Yeah. Oh. Technical difficulties. I did not do anything. Okay, it's fixed. Has anybody ever been to a PetSmart and looked at a tank and said, maybe I should get one? But then you do a bit of research and figure that it's going to be too time-consuming and costly. Well, I didn't do that kind of research. I didn't know that it was going to be time-consuming or costly. I was only 10 years old, so I didn't even do enough research to figure that out. Instead, I like to look at pictures of fish and their colors. I didn't know a lot about this stuff when I first came into the hobby, and I still don't know that much. For example, I didn't know that I did dechlorinate the water, so I had a lot of dead fish. But I persevered, and fish are quite fun to have, but the first few months, you will have a lot of dead fish. But I still learned from it. Hi, my name is Oliver Piccolo, and welcome to my presentation, Life in a Fishbowl. This presentation is about aquariums, biotopes, the technical aspects of having an aquarium. In this presentation, I will be talking about the history of aquariums, how to build an aquarium, my aquarium plan, my process, that should not be there. Okay, Amazon, as you see, Borneo and Lake Tanganyika, the highs and lows, and a bunch of other cool things. How long do you think aquariums have been around for? Dean?
70 years.
A bit higher. Yes, you.
1010.
Close. Any more people? Yes.
Like 175.
Okay, close enough. 2,500 years. Okay. Aquariums have been around for thousands of years. The first kind of aquarium was in ancient Mesopotamia, where people had ponds in their houses and gardens. These were for food, and the ponds were primarily owned by upper class, and it was a sign of wealth, but they're also used as ornaments in their gardens or temples. In ancient Egypt, all of royalty held a certain kind of fish in high regard, such as tilapia and Nile perch. Historians assume that these fish were a symbol of fertility. So many pharaohs had pictures, symbols, or mummified fish in their tombs. Many palaces had ponds, which are used for decor and tranquility, but also as a food source. China. In ancient China, breeding carp was popular and later turned to the breeding goldfish. Wealthy people owned fish, and they're generally kept in ponds in their gardens. However, they would use fish bowls made of porcelain to bring the fish into home when they had guests over. This was the first ever aquarium fish bowl thing. It was a sign of wealth. Fast forward a few years in the mid-1800s, a French woman named Jeanine Villex Power, it's French, so I don't know how to pronounce it. She was a marine biologist who used the first glass aquarium to look at aquatic plants and creatures. This is how the first glass aquarium was created. Modern-day aquariums were first introduced in early Victorian Britain. This is when the first aquarium opened to the public. People love visiting this aquarium, and many opened soon after. Many rich people wanted to own their own aquarium, so that became popular, but fast forward a few years in the mid-20th century, the average person can own one. Modern day aquariums come in many shapes and sizes. Some can be as small as a box, and others can be as large as a house. Many things can be put in aquariums, like reptiles, marine mammals, but the most popular option is fish. This has made the hobby of owning a personal aquarium very popular. Most large aquariums tanks are in public zoos or aquariums, such as the Vancouver Aquarium, like in these pictures, which is Canada's largest aquarium. Many things happen at the Vancouver Aquarium, such as education, rehabilitation, conservation. I like aquariums because you can see many different kinds of animals, exotic fish, reptiles, or other animals like monkeys. I lost my spot. I like aquariums because you can see all different kinds of aquatic life, like freshwater stingrays, which I had no idea existed up until a couple years ago. Freshwater stingray right there. And also that pond outside of the tropical area that holds all those big fish right there. But this is not about me. Aquariums are major tourist attractions and for a marine research conservation center and a space for education, interpretation related to marine life and the environment. But I think everybody knows what an aquarium is. The home aquarium industry is worth $17 billion annually. Okay. People can buy fish from any range of size, from their pinky or fingernail to a medium-sized car. People can buy fish because they want to have a small part of a river or a lake. They're very popular because people like to have color in their spaces. Now you've heard about the irrelevant information about the history of aquariums. You might be wondering what actually goes into aquariums. Well, I'll actually show you. Okay, this is a glass aquarium. Thank you to Raf for giving that to me. I do not press the wrong button. I'm walking back. This is some driftwood, black sand for substrate, and rocks for hardscape and just to look nice. Okay. Setting up an aquarium, Setting up an aquarium, you will first need plants, sometimes substrate and rocks, driftwood. This will make a fun mix of creativity, biology, and patience. It starts with choosing the right tank, whether it's a 20-gallon or a big show tank. Just make sure it's on a sturdy, level surface and not in direct sunlight. I forgot that once. Hello, algae. Substrate is important sometimes. There are some plants that don't need substrate, but most plants need substrate at the roots. Start with about 1.5 inches of nutrient-rich soil, then cap it with 2 to 3 inches of gravel or sand. Really does not matter. I usually slope it at the back, towards the back, just to give it more depth and a more natural look. After that, it's time to add hardscape. Use rocks and driftwood. Use aquarium-safe materials like dragonstone, Ceres stone, or lava rock. Lava rock. Arrange them in unnatural, uneven shapes. Avoid perfect symmetry unless you're trying to do a tank like that. There are many good types of driftwood that you could use, like spiderwood, that's on the table, and Malaysian wood. This adds cool organic lines, but make sure to soak it first or the wood will float and release tannins into the water unless you're trying to make a tinted look. This part takes time. Keep playing around with it until it looks right, and don't rush it. When you're happy with the layout, fill the tank about halfway using dechlorinated water. Pour it gently onto a plate or plastic bag to avoid disturbing substrate. Onto my favorite plants. Finally, my favorite part. Foreground plants like dwarf hair grass, like right there, or midground. Dwarf hair grass will make great carpet. Mid-ground plants like crypts or Java ferns add bulk. And the taller ones like Vallisneria or Amazon swords will fill out the back. Right there. Yes, you can, Dorian. Use tweezers to plant rooted species and tie or glue rhizome plants like anubias to rocks or wood. Don't bury them or they will rot. Rhizome plant right there, I hope. Okay. Once that's done, fill the rest of the tank and add your equipment, filters, heaters, if you need it, and an aquarium light. Start with 6 to 8 hours of light per day. Okay. Now let it cycle. Don't add fish just yet. Give it at least 2 weeks or more if you can. Even when you're using bottled bacteria, it's better to wait. Test your water regularly. First, ammonia will spike, then drop. Then nitrites will spike, then drop. Then you can start adding your fish. But do it slowly. If you rush it, you risk stressing your fish and possibly killing them. How many people here have had a pet fish? Oh, a lot of you. Wow. Was this an impulsive buy? Makes sense, makes sense. I normally like to plan out before I get an aquarium, or I just go to an aquarium store with my dad and he gets me stuff. He's very poor impulse control, so this is very common in our household. My mom has a new rule that I'm not allowed to go to a pet store or aquarium store with my dad just to not risk this. But in seriousness, it's best to plan out before you get an aquarium. For this project, I planned 3 aquariums for them in 3 different places and costed them. I costed out all the expenses. It is very important the research before you get an aquarium to ensure that you're setting up the right environment for the right fish. This will help keep your fish healthy and safe. You want to make sure that you don't mix aggressive fish with peaceful fish, otherwise you might get some dead fish. Don't laugh. Sad. In this slide, you'll see 2 pictures of tanks I made on Scape It, aquascaping website that helps plan out what you want to make, and my very detailed aquarium making plan with a lot of spelling mistakes. Oh. Once I had my plans, I went shopping with my mom. How sad. I spent way too much money. It was my money, but I still bought way too much stuff. I came to April's aquarium with a very detailed plan on what to buy. The first time I got rocks, wood, and substrate for around $300. I spent for around 2 hours in the store just looking at stuff, seeing what I could make on a scaping table. Later I came back to buy plants, and on my 3rd trip I got fish. It all costed around $1,500. way too much. My 3 aquariums. Okay. When I first, wait. Oh wait, I was meant to go into that slide. Okay. When I first started this project, I wanted to set up my tanks in November, giving me something to do whilst the winter, and giving me a lot of time for these tanks to evolve up until the end of Masterworks. However, my parents had a different idea. Someone bought our house. How fun, I had to move. Question to the audience, how much do you think my smallest aquarium would weigh 10 gallons when full? Max. 40 kilos? Maybe in pounds? Okay, AJ.
Like maybe 200 pounds.
Close. Dorian. Bit less, you're going way too high. Okay, Liam. Harper. You are all very wrong. It is 110 pounds. Now imagine my 55-gallon tank. How much would you think that would weigh?
55 gallons?
Yes.
One full?
Yes, one full.
Yeah.
Max. 220 kilograms. Pounds. Okay, Kai. Yes. Close. Who? Yes, Julian. You are all way off. It's 2,000 pounds. Yeah. Yeah. So I was faced with a problem. I couldn't set my tanks up before I moved on January 17th. This delayed my setup for a few months. The actual moving part was short but stressful. I woke up at 6 a.m. because I needed to lower the water to 25% to be able to actually lift the tanks. I got some help moving the 2 tanks that were set up. Thankful that the big one wasn't set up. Okay. We loaded the tanks into a car, and the drive was stressful because the road to my house had a lot of potholes. There was a lot of splooshing in the back. Once I had a day to settle my new home, I went off island to buy some plants. So I took time off school and spent way too many hours setting up my tanks. Way too many. My first tank that I wanted to set up was the Amazon River tank. This is my 55-gallon tank. It's 4 feet long and a pain to move, and even harder to set up. Question to the audience, how long do you think this tank took to set up? Yes, you. Yes, you. I forget people's names. Maya, yes. I wish. Okay. Wyatt. Getting closer. Okay, Dorian.
5 hours.
Close. 11 hours. I wanted this tank to represent a unique and vibrant ecosystem found in areas of Venezuela and Brazil, especially in the Rio Negro River basin. This river is a large tributary of the Amazon River and it lies within the Amazon and Orinoco basins. I was especially attracted to this river due to its black water quality, where decaying vegetation released tannins that changed water color to a darker tea-like hue. Water. Such conditions provide a very unique environment. I also appreciate that the fact that this river can harbor a great range of species of fish that I prefer and have kept in the past. I've watched quite a number of Amazon aquarium construction videos, like this one, yeah. And they inspire me to try and do one myself. This biotope, try and make a biotope that mirrors and captures the Rio Negro itself. I've incorporated areas with rich aquatic plants, not just because I think they're aesthetically pleasing, but because they serve an important role, such as filtering, creating oxygen, or just help break down poisonous chemicals that are in the water. thus creating a more hospitable environment for fish. I picked a combination of plants with different leaf sizes, shapes, colors to provide a visual interest. I used aqua soil top of an additional layer of sand right there. Yeah. To provide them with nutrients so they can grow. The aqua soil provides plants with nutrients and the sand covers them to avoid the nutrients from draining into the water, causing algae blooms. This blend also naturalizes the look of the tank as if it were an actual river thing. Okay, fish selection. My fish choices for this tank were all species that are natively occurring or common in the Rio Negro River or close by. These are cardinal tetra, a peaceful, colorful schooling fish; neon tetra, a similarly sized schooling fish, also peaceful; serpent tetra is a big, semi-aggressive fish, adding some dynamic action; Bursinose pleco, the best fish I have, it's a peaceful algae-eating fish. And then the red devil angelfish, a shellfish that is big and that is quite colorful and aggressive when it gets mature. These fish are all community friendly under the right circumstances and show the diversity of the Amazon. My installation video, yeah. Full screen, yeah. I started with sand, then aqua soil, then a bunch of rocks and driftwood to show actual river. And then that's really what I did for 11 hours. Just wait. Okay. I get to the everyone? No. Escape. Yeah, escape. And then I added plants whilst also watching TV. Yeah. Okay, there's the plants that are actually starting to go in. Okay. Okay, there, I started filling up the tank with some plastic bag to stop sand from disturbing the surface. Okay. And then this is how the tank looked after I set it up. Why is the video still playing? Doesn't matter. I chose Borneo for tank number 2 because it's an island with its own unique and interesting fish. In seriousness, I actually got it because I already had a fish from Borneo and I didn't really want to give it away. So it gave me a fun challenge to create an entire tank around one single fish. I learned about its home and process. This tank is a 20-gallon tank. It's my mid-sized tank, and I always recommend this size.
Can you wait a minute while I change mine? It's just when you press it to change it.
Yay.
There's going to be 2 more of us.
Oh. Okay, plants. The plants that I chose for this tank are similar to the Amazon tank in purpose. I focused on Southeast Asian and Bornean plants. These plants are adapted to the diverse water parameters and lighting, but still provide oxygenation and filtration and hiding places and the aesthetics. The plants are all different kinds of cryptocoryne and java fern, as you can see, and also moss. The substrate is white sand with a nutrient-rich soil balls. Okay, fish selection, I chose dwarf gourami, the fish I previously had. It's brightly colored, occasionally territorial fish, but personality is a big factor. Borneo sucker, an algae-eating fish. Yep, an algae-eating fish that clings to rocks and glass and eats algae. Surprised, they don't eat algae off of plants. And celestial pearl danio, a small peaceful schooling fish that adds continuous movement. Okay. This tank took 2 hours to build. I started with a layer of aqua soil covered with sand, then I added hardscape. Starting with a large piece of driftwood from a previous tank, I attached fern-type plants to it, and then planted the cryptocorin species in the substrate. I arranged it of a shaded root-filled stream beds that you can find in Southeast Asia. Hurry up. So quiet.
If you don't do it full screen, I won't have to change.
Yep. This is how the tank looked originally after I set it up. Oh. I have always wanted to keep my own African cichlids and wanted their own special tank for them. I chose Lake Tanganyika because it's one of the largest and oldest freshwater lakes in the world. It holds some of the most intriguing and bizarre fish species. The water is alkaline and hard, and compared to the Amazon and Borneo's soft acidic water, Lake Tanganyika is an African Great Lake, and it's the world's second largest freshwater lake by volume and the second deepest. So it's basically second in everything. This tank is my 10-gallon tank, it's the smallest one. The substrate is basically just sand because there's no heavy root-feeding plants growing in it, so I didn't really need to buy more plant fertilizer stuff. I have one type of plant in this tank. I chose Nubius nana because it's a rhizome plant, which means it can't be planted and it has to be glued to rocks, which I actually find kind of cool. Okay. Fish selection. I chose Neophagus multifasciatus, one of the world's smallest cichlids, but they're also known as shell-dweller cichlids. They're a pleasure to watch. They burrow, redecorate the substrate, and they live in snail shells. My favorite thing about them is that they cheerfully thrive in a 10-gallon tank, so they're perfect for them. Okay. I started with a large layer of sand and rocks, placed some snail shells everywhere, filled the tank up with a beer bottle. This is how the tank looked originally when I set it up. Daily maintenance. Each day I make sure to spend at least 10 minutes, okay, 10 minutes with them each day. When I turn on the lights in the morning, I check for fish, if they're healthy looking or behaving properly. This is important to spend time observing the tank. The right amount of food is essential when feeding enough to permit when they finish eating, they should finish eating in a matter of a few minutes and remove excess food. Add dechlorinated water in case of evaporation. Keep your eye on temperature and to see if your equipment like heaters and filters are running properly. This is all just part of daily observations to check if everything's still in order. Weekly maintenance is easy if you have the time. Replace 10 to 20% of water annually each week to help remove waste and add essential nutrients. Use siphon to remove debris like poo and other things that you don't want from the substrate while draining the water. Also remember to scrape off algae off the glass in the tank each week so you can see your fish and keep them happy and healthy. There are many highs and lows of owning an aquarium. It is great to get new fish, breed fish. This will give you a sense of pride and accomplishment. But if a fish dies like you see in this picture, it just makes you feel sad and makes you feel like you could have done something else to prevent this. But sometimes you can't and the fish just dies, but it's still probably on you. You ask yourself, yeah, it was definitely on me for that one. You ask yourself, did I feed my fish the wrong amount? Or is the chemical balance in my tank wrong? Or did I forget to do a water change and that killed my fish? It never feels good, but what does feel good is when you set up a new tank, get new fish, breed fish that you've always wanted. Okay, Amazon final. This tank took 11 hours, as I've already told you guys. It was fun, but it could have been faster. I find it really nice and how the plants are really growing in on that one side. But it's still really nice. Yeah. This tank was a very interesting tank to play around with. I wish the tank was a bit bigger. Maybe? Maybe? Okay, that's a no. Okay, but it's still a really interesting tank. Yeah. And this tank is probably one of my favorites. I mean, no, I don't have any favorites, they're all special. Okay, this tank, it's just a small tank with many small fish. They've bred way too much. I have like 80 fish in this tank now. I started with 6. Yeah. Okay. In conclusion, what started as a 10-year-old's fish are pretty moment turned into a full-blown algae scraping, wallet draining, water changing obsession. I've learned a lot, mostly in the hard way, like how a fish can die from being in the wrong kind of tap water. Who knew? And how moving a tank is basically weightlifting with extra anxiety. But I also got to create teeny tiny underwater universes and learned about ecosystems and spent way too much cash on wee little shrimps. Was it all worth it? Totally, even if my mom has officially banned me from pet stores for life. Thank you for swimming along with me. I promise none of you have to drag a 2,000-pound aquarium home unless you really want to. Okay, thank you. Thank you to my parents for funding a lot of this project and driving me to aquarium stores. Thank you to Amanda with helping writing and being my advisor for this project. Thank you to Raph for being my external advisor and coming to my house and giving me excellent advice. Thank you to Darren and Jacob at April's Aquarium for helping with this project and answering my many questions. Questions? I know. Dorian, you're not my advisor.
Yeah. Excellent presentation. We are going to start with questions from the advisory team, and then we'll be going to the floor.
Uh-oh.
Thank you, Mr. Piccolo. That was fantastic. It's amazing to me how much knowledge and expertise you have in this subject. It was very obvious the first time we had a meeting. It was Raph, yourself, and I, and you just were talking the language with Raph and had a lot of knowledge on this topic. So congratulations.
Thank you.
It really comes through in your presentation how effortlessly you roll off all the names and facts about the fish and plants. My question to you is a couple of questions. One, you took a weekly observation. What were you looking for in your weekly observations?
I was looking for differences in the tank, like if a fish dies or if they breed a lot, just so I can, I did a weekly observation because I wanted to keep track of the tanks and yeah.
Okay. I noticed there was always checks on the water, the nitrates, so what were you looking for?
I was looking for if the water got dangerously high and could kill the fish.
Okay. And my second question is what happened to the low there? What happened to the fish?
It exploded.
Oh my. Okay. And is that from, do you know?
I have no idea. It's just always been like that and it kept growing.
Okay.
Its stomach kept expanding for like a month and a half, so.
Okay. And you mentioned breeding. So you were breeding fish in the Lake Tanganyika?
Yes, unintentionally.
Unintentionally, okay. And so what's the plan for that?
Raph, do you want to take some? I'm probably gonna sell. Okay. I'm probably gonna sell them.
Okay.
Just to make a bit of profit off of this expensive hobby.
And you'll move them into another tank, or yeah. Okay.
Oh yes, yes.
Okay. And my last question is, somewhere through this we stumbled on slides about plants, and you're like, oh, my favorite. And it was interesting that plants are your favorite part of this process.
Yeah.
What do you like about the plants?
I find them just aesthetically pleasing. and they're like a natural filter, which I find pretty cool.
Cool. Okay, thank you. No.
Mr. Piccolo, thank you for the great presentation. You chose to do biotypes. Perhaps you can explain what a biotype is?
Oh yeah,
Why you
I forgot about that.
decided to do biotypes for your aquariums.
Okay. Biotopes are basically just trying to get as close as possible to a natural ecosystem. I think that's basically what it is. Is it?
Right? Using native species.
Yes, and plants.
Like fish and plants.
Yeah.
Also, the Lake Tanganyikan cichlids.
Mm-hmm.
What's the common name for them?
Oh, shell dweller cichlids.
The ones you picked?
Yeah, shell dwellers.
How do they breed? Are they egg layers?
I think they're egg layers or mouth breeders. I don't know, mouth breeders.
Could you explain what a mouth brooder is?
The eggs, one of the parents take the eggs and put them in their mouth, so it's safe for the eggs and that they can all hatch properly.
And do you think that this is a type of defensive mechanism so that the most small fish will survive?
Yes, yeah. Because they're the smallest kind of fish, almost everything in the lake will try and eat them. So, yeah, just gotta get the population up.
And after all this, do you think one day you might consider coming to work for me?
Yes, hopefully. Hopefully.
Great. Happy to hear it.
Yes, hopefully. Yes. I forget the name of these, but I find them really cool, and I really want a tank with them. Flower horn, yes.
Flower horn?
Yeah.
So that's normal, that growth?
Not really. They were created in a lab, so they're meant to be like that.
Thank you, Mr. Piccolo. What you may not know is I gave this kid a nickname this year. I called him Sleeper. And that was the day he first rocked this suit, because he's always pulling out something really interesting, another side of him that he plays his cards really close to his chest. And I really enjoyed what you were doing here. I find when you learn about someone's hobby, this thing that they dive into, it's always a fascinating thing in itself, but also reveals something about you. And you talked about some wonderful things about how, first of all, we see how creative you are as you're building these different aquariums and the different, what did you call the landscaping kind of thing? So the hardscaping or something, that kind of thing? So we're watching you do that. And you talked about these moments where you feel like, I get to create this whole little mini universe, and the other side of it where, fish die and you have to take the responsibility for that. I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you take away from this. You've been doing it for a while. What is it, just as a very personal reflection, I'd love to hear more.
It's very personal to me. I find aquariums very interesting. I've always wanted them. What do I say? You're putting me on the spot.
I don't mean to.
That is the point, though.
Yes. I don't really have a definitive answer right at this moment. Yeah. Uh-oh.
Hello, Mr. Piccolo. I just wanted to ask you a few questions about your very excellent presentation. My first one is, what do you think the biggest setback you had was?
Moving. Yeah, moving.
My second one is, how do you think this project has bettered you as a person by taking these creatures under your wing and taking care of them?
It's made me more responsible.
You can.
Great questions.
I have one more question that I forgot. Initially, you had a section, in your paper, you had a section on ethics. What are some of the ethics you think are in play with owning fish?
Don't abuse your fish. Try and keep your tanks natural, or just keep them in a right amount of water. Just do your research, and don't abuse them. Basically covered most of it. Dorian? Why are you raising your hand?
You said that one was like the 55-gallon tank and the 22-gallon tank. How many gallons is that one?
I don't know because...
It's like another jug, so it's about a gallon.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I have a question about breeding fish. So the only ones that bred, I think, are your cichlids?
Yes.
And why haven't the other ones bred? Is there not
Because
a
I'm
male and
trying
female?
to not make them breed. Because
Uh-huh.
I don't want a lot of fish in the tanks.
And is there a drawback to having 60 fish? I know they're really teeny tiny, but can you have too many fish in an aquarium?
Yes.
And why is that?
Because a lot of fish need a lot different kinds of space, and if they don't have them much, it can cause a lot of problems, like territory and aggression.
Congratulations, Mr. Piccolo. That was very informative. I'm curious, like you mentioned you had the Amazon tank and the Lake Tanganyika tank, and then you had the fish. So am I to understand that the fish in those tanks are from those areas?
Yes.
Right, so they're indigenous to those areas or whatever, and you have them. I'm wondering, like, when you go into a fish store and you see all that variety, and you sort of hinted that your favorite was genetically created.
Yeah.
So are lots of those fish coming out of sort of creative geneticists, or are they all like living in the wild, all those beautiful colors and things? Like, is it?
Most live in the wild, but a few, like that cichlid, are like bred specifically for those that big head.
Right, so there's some amount of the industry that's created for unique and captivating visually.
Yeah.
Like that fish was amazing because it did look like it had a disease or something, or a cancer or something, but that wasn't the case. It was just normal but made.
It's just a normal genetically modified fish.
Right. Thank you.
All my fish are just bred from breeders. They're all native.
Mr. Piccolo, it's so lovely to see your passion and the amount of learning that you did about these ecosystems and the fish and their needs is just incredible. It's such a wealth of knowledge. You mentioned the monitoring for chemicals in the water, so the nitrate levels and all that. What do you do? Like, how did you learn, okay, the nitrate levels are too high, or nitrogen levels too high, or there's not enough oxygen? How do you mitigate those situations, and how did you learn that stuff?
I learned it because I had a lot of fish dying and I had no idea why. But actually how to prevent it, there's a lot of chemicals I can just place in the water that will get rid of some of this stuff.
So they can buffer the
just
pH
buffer
or,
it. Yeah. Or just do a water change, and that sometimes helps.
So is there, other than your advisor, is there like a body of fish aquarium owners that share information, or how did you mentioned a YouTube video, but how do you learn that stuff?
YouTube, fish forums, I use Discord sometimes. So there's a lot of ways that you can talk with people.
And my second question is, I want to create a pond in my garden this
Great
summer
idea.
on Cortez. Do you have any advice for me? I mean, I know an aquarium and pond are a little bit different, but what advice do you have for me?
I don't really do any research on ponds. I really want one, but I haven't really gotten into it.
So maybe I start finding my own forum on pond geeks and go for it? Okay, thank you.
Okay, this is the last question, Mr. Pickett.
Thank you so much for that incredible presentation, Mr. Piccolo. I have a question for you from right over there next door in the...
It's not in there.
It's not in there anymore?
It's at my house.
Oh, it's at your house. Okay, well, amazing. It's now at your house, but I don't know if you noticed anyone who was in the purple room, but there was a fish tank that appeared in like the last month and a half, and I think that was for a design project. Can you tell us a little bit about what you created in that tank?
I tried to do an aquarium that could last over the summer. Didn't really work out, but I still plants and nothing else.
No fish to eat the algae?
There's nothing to eat the algae in there.
We have one more question. No? Okay. Mr. Piccolo, I'm really impressed with how you answered these questions and the amount of detail that you went into on the different biotypes. So I think you deserve a big round of applause.
Yeah! I'm done.
So can everyone have a seat? I would just want to explain the process. After Mr. Piccolo's presentation, he will be meeting with his advisors to give him feedback, and that will take about 10 minutes while the rest of you take a break. Then we'll come back in for our final presentation of the day, which is going to be Max Beals talking about word lore. We also have some visitors that are grade 5s that are coming to this presentation, so please welcome them and their parents. And we will see you back here in 10 minutes. final Masterworks presentation. But before we start that, I would like to make an important announcement about Mr. Oliver Piccolo, who has met all the requirements of the Masterworks program. Before we start, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the program here. So we have a program called Masterworks that's been going on for 29 years, which is quite incredible. And what did you say this morning? 345 students by the end of today will have been up here presenting their Masterworks, which is lovely because the grade 9s really do showcase the best of all the skills that we teach them at Alpha School and the best of the qualities of being human. And the project is a year-long passion project, and the students research with the guidance of their faculty advisor, but also they have external advisors who are professionals in the field and can mentor and lend support. So we're really grateful to all the people that are working with our students to create the incredible presentations that you see today. Each grade 9 student writes a 15 to 40 page paper, and what you see today is the presentation of the best of that paper. They are the experts in the room, besides their advisors usually, so it is wonderful for us to sit back and let them teach us for this week. There are a few things that are going on behind the scenes, and we have this as online stream, so you can dial in online right now, which I think Mr. Beale's advisors are, and you can also watch this and any of the other presentations that have happened this week because they are archived on our YouTube channel. We'd like to really welcome all the community members that are here and also the grade 5s that have shown up to see what Masterworks is all about and to have our Experience IPS Day after this. And without further ado, I would like to bring up Mr. Max Beals to talk to us about word lore.
Thank you. All right, Jen, is it too late to change my topic?
No.
All right. All right, bear. What if I told you that, this word is interesting, but why? It's not interesting because of the way it's pronounced. It's not interesting because of the way it's spelled. And it's not even interesting in, it's used. In fact, if I didn't tell you why this word was interesting, you would probably never know unless you were really into this kind of stuff. But the reason that this word is interesting is because of where it comes from. The word bear comes from the Proto-Germanic word barrow, meaning the brown one. The reason that this is interesting is because, one, Proto-Germanic was spoken 3,000 years ago, and it's the language which Old English came out of, but two, because they already had a word for bear. It was arthas. The people who spoke this language chose to use another one, barrow, but why? It was because they were afraid of bears. These speakers, who come from the regions we now know as Sweden, Denmark, and Germany, you might recognize those places as places that might have bears, So these people were also quite superstitious and believed that by saying the bear's name, it would attract the bear. So they instead decided to call it the brown one, which became barrow, and then which became bear in English. This is a reconstruction of how the word would change into English if we had kept using the word arthas instead of, changing to the word barrow, which turned into the word bear. First, we have arthas, the original word which was used by the Proto-Germanic people. Then, we would have gotten arda. This would have changed, because words change over time and how they're pronounced, and we can usually figure out how these words would change based on rules from just there are just rules for these kinds of things. Then it would have changed into earth in Old English, which would have been bear. I'm just going to say bear a whole bunch of times. And then earth would have changed into arth in modern English. Hi, I am Max Beals, and welcome to my Masterworks. All right, here's a table of contents because we like to know where we're going. The first part of my Masterworks will be some important terminologies that you should know to understand the rest of my Masterworks. Then I'm going to summarize how languages work. And then lastly, I am going to explain, well, not lastly, then I'm going to explain how writing systems work. And then we'll get into the kind of the second part of the Masterworks, the stories that are told by words. And then we'll get into the conclusion, terminology. The first words you need for my Masterworks are etymology, Proto-Indo-European, and Indo-European. To start, etymology is the field of tracking down where a word came from, like I just showed with the word bear and, oh, wrong map, sorry, arda, and then arth and bear, all that. That's etymology. It's also like how the word table comes from the Latin word tabula. The second two are Indo-European and Proto-Indo-European, and if you couldn't tell by the fact that they sound pretty similar, except one is proto in front of it, they're sort of the same thing. Indo-European is a collection of families that includes English, Spanish, German, Russian, Norwegian, Hindi, Farsi, Greek, and so many more languages. And Proto-Indo-European is the language which all of these languages come from. Now, what does it mean for them to all be related? Like I just said, they all came from one language. This means that if you track the origin of any, same word in English, Spanish, German, Russian, Norwegian, roughly the same word, Hindi, all those languages that I just mentioned, thousands of years, they all likely come from the same word or a word with a fairly close meaning. Let's take a look at the word for mother, which is meter in Proto-Indo-European. This is why the word mother is mother in English, mater in German, mata in Hindi, mat in Russian, madre in Italian, matera in Greek, and maher in Irish. Sorry if I said it wrong in your language. Well, it's not the norm for etymologies to be this clean. There are often a lot of shared roots among most of these languages. Like, you see, they all come from here, sort of. This is a tree for everything you need to know in my explanation. This here is not really a thing, it's just Proto-Indo-European, and the rest of those things that branch off are branches of Proto-Indo-European. It's a little bit less realistic than it actually happened, like the branching of these languages, and the time frame is also wrong. It doesn't really have loanwords or other outcomes of languages being close together either. This should, however, tell you the origins of where most Western European languages come from. To show you why I just told you all that, the name of my Masterworks, Word Lore, has a fair bit of thought behind it. I probably should have added a little bit more in the name just to actually tell you what it's about, but the name is the English word for etymology, or the science of words. No, I did not just say English wrong. Anglish is a real form of English that nobody speaks. It's just English with only Germanic words, meaning that words from French, Latin, or any other of those languages are swapped with Germanic ones that the languages like French and Latin replaced. If I was, hold on, where am I? There's an often held false truth that English is in the Romance group, like French, Italian, Spanish, and Latin. This is false. It's hard to even think of English as a hybrid between these two languages. Two language groups. If I was to speak in a way that only used words that come from Germanic, no one would be able to tell. In fact, for this past slide, I have only used words that come from Germanic. This means that I haven't used a single word that comes from Latin, French, or any other Romance language until now, aside from proper names, demonstrations, and the word language, since it's really hard to give a presentation about languages without being able to say the word language. The reason that this is relevant is because almost 60% of words in English come from either Latin or French. That means until I've just told you, I've been restricting myself to using around 25% of all the vocabulary in English because there are some other places where vocabulary comes from. This is why English isn't a Romance language, even though 60% of our vocabulary is of Romance origin. The 25% of it that comes from Germanic origin is used way more frequently. The fact that I can give part of a speech without using the Latin or French parts of the English language is why English, 1, doesn't come from Latin, 2, isn't a Romance language, and 3, isn't even a hybrid between the Romance and Germanic languages. The explanation of the name on screen goes deeper. As you can see, I put the etymology of the name on screen. The column in the middle is the language which it came from, and how and when that language is spoken. Word hasn't really changed much aside from slight vowel changes in the Proto-Germanic use of the suffix "an," which I think marked a case, which I'll explain later, which was lost. You can see here. And that little lowercase h thing that marks that it's aspirated, which we kind of just forgot. Word also, the meaning shifted slightly, and word meant something meant to speak or to say, and it was more a verb, but could be changed into water if you wanted to use it to mean a word. Lore has changed quite a bit more. Coming from Old English lar, there's not much change aside, Coming from Old English lar, there's not much that changed aside from the spelling and some vowel shifts that happened between the 14th and 17th centuries. Lizo to lar is a little bit more complicated to explain, and since it requires some more linguistical stuff. English simplified diphthongs, which is essentially this, which you can see here is a combination of two vowels. The AI just turned into A. And the Z changed into an R through something called rhoticism. Lice changed to Lizo because of something called Grimm's Law. And Grimm's Law, created by the Brothers Grimm, yes, those Brothers Grimm who made the terrifying fairy tales that got turned into Disney movies, Proto-Indo-European words would often turn an S into a Z, and vowels just kind of change over time. The meaning of the word changed a fair bit more as well. Lice meant to gather, Lizo, which meant the same thing, except you could use it to refer to gathering knowledge. This turned into lar, meaning to teach or to teachings, and lar became lore, which means teaching, learning, or just a field of knowledge. A more direct translation from English, which I talked about earlier, which is sort of a language, would be knowledging. So you could say knowledgings, or knowledging as in learning, because it's not really clear whether it means like to learn or to teach. However, if you were to take the Indo-European, just like shift it back in time without, like shift the meanings of the word and the word itself without actually changing the word, like you could see here, word and lice, you would get the word word lice, which literally translates to speaking gathering in Proto-Indo-European. And if you couldn't tell, there might be some parallels here between a speaking gathering and Masterworks. While it might be grammatically wrong, like nothing here is really right, the meaning is still correct, and it would be probably interpreted, like I said, as a social event where people speak. This is the second reason why I chose this name, because it's exactly what Masterworks is, a gathering where people speak. Let's look at some comparisons between words from Germanic. Let's look at some comparisons between words from Germanic and words from Romance origins. Romance words: construct, comprehend, language, and many more words. Romance words all entered English either during the Norman invasion of 1066, in which French-speaking Normans became the upper classes in England, or during around the 16th centuries and beyond, when scholars took words from Latin and used them in English. These are all Germanic words. Germanic words tend to be shorter and harder than Romance words, and are often simpler concepts in English, like walk, book, man, and more. More is a Germanic word, but I didn't really mean it to, be a word in this context. Germanic words are also the original English words that have stuck around since Old English, albeit having changed slightly. How do languages work? If you were to categorize all languages into two broad categories, there would be synthetic languages, like Latin, Polish, Turkish, and basically all the other European languages except for like maybe English. And there would be analytic languages, which would be like Mandarin, English, Vietnamese, Thai, and Burmese. The difference between these two types of languages comes down to the way words are made. In synthetic languages, like you can see here, words are coded with a lot of morphemes. Now, what's a morpheme? It is the single smallest amount of information that you can have here. Like, for example, in Latin, you would say virum vidi. Vir, meaning man, and making it the direct object of vidi. Vidi is to see, but you see, vid just means to see, and then the e at the end, or it's actually an I, a long I, makes it the first person saw it. So it would be like I saw, and that would directly translate to I saw a man, or the man. It's not really clear in this context. In analytic languages, however, you would say I saw. In English, I think you can break this down yourself, but I'll just do it. You would say I saw a man. I, meaning that it was first person, saw, past form of to see, indefinite article, which we don't really need, but we have it anyways, and man, which is the singular form of man. Hold on. This is why Canada needs to stop putting our signs in French. Look at just how inefficient this is. I'll break it down for you. So this marks that it's the first person, which is like standard, you know, pretty short, just one letter. But this marks is in the past tense. It looks pretty efficient right now until you realize that they mark it in the past tense again, which they don't really need to do. Sorry, Carrie. Le makes it definite masculine article, but the fact that it's masculine, one, isn't really important since it doesn't matter, two, and secondly, it's already mentioned here. And also, the words are way longer than they have to be. Let's compare it to something like Chinese, which is a lot more efficient in this, in that this is, I'm not going to try to pronounce it, it's wo, but there's a tone on it. Kiana, what does this mean? Do you know? Yeah. It's eat, right? But
Do I say the whole thing?
yeah, sure. All right, yeah, you heard that. And then it's a lot more efficient. Nope, wrong button. Lot more efficient and lot shorter too. Now let's get into word order. Some common word orders are subject, verb, object. Oh, I should probably explain what those all mean. So subject would be in the sentence I eat apples. I would be the subject since I'm the one eating the apples. The verb in that sentence would be eat, since that's what you're doing to the apples. And then the object in that sentence would be the apples. So some common word orders in a bunch of languages are SVO, which is subject, verb, object, which is used in English, French, and Mandarin. SOV, which is like used in Japanese, Turkish, and Korean. And then VSO, or verb, subject, object, which isn't really used that much, but it's used in Arabic, Irish, and Tagalog. 90% of languages either use SVO or SOV. I don't really know why, I just know that they do that because I don't know. But anyways, there are some languages that don't really need a word order since they mark their words with cases. Now I said I would get into cases, so I'm going to get into cases. Cases. We have, in language, there's basically two types of cases that I think pretty much every language has. We have the accusative case. I'm going to use the laser pointer for this. I slapped him. That would make him the direct object of me slapping him. So he is the object. You wouldn't say he slapped me, him slapped me. You wouldn't say that because him is always the object. And now in the nominative case of he, you would say he slapped me. And that's because he is nominative. You wouldn't say I slapped he, you would say I slapped him. Does that make sense? All right, good. How do writing systems work? There are roughly 3 major groups of writing systems. These aren't it. This is segmental writing systems, which have each character representing really only one sound. So we have alphabets here, which have one sound per character. So for example, everything here just says this is a sample sentence, not in the language, just like transliterated. So if you were to pronounce this, if you were to pronounce this, it would be this is a sample sentence. So each one here only makes one sound. The thing about abjads that's different is that they don't mark where their vowels are. So in languages like Arabic, Hebrew, and whatever this is, they don't mark where their vowels are. Instead, you just kind of have to infer where the vowels are. And then lastly, abudigas, which we have Devangari, Ethiopian Ge'ez, and then I have no idea what this is. I think it's used in Southeast Asia. What they do is they write the consonants and then they mark what vowel sound they will make afterwards. Then there is the second broad group of writing systems, syllables. These ones are much less common, but they're pretty efficient since each syllable is only marked by one character. Yeah, Joe, I know you're laughing. Essentially, this just says this is sample text, not even in Korean. So these ones can encode one syllable per character, which is a lot faster than, as you can see, encoding syllables in like 3 characters. These two, Cherokee and Korean, are the only ones I can name off the top of my head. So yeah, they're less common, but they're more efficient. And then lastly, we have the pretty much only logography that more than 5 people use, which is Mandarin Chinese. And it is used by quite a few people, actually, because it is the most natively spoken language in the world. These ones are even more efficient than syllables because they encode 1 word per character. Now, let's get into basically the second part, but it's actually the 4th part of my Masterworks. How words tell stories. Whoops. Tea. Tea is one of the most interesting words in the English language, and for good reason. But why? It's not because of the spelling or how it's used, just like bear. It's not how easy of a word it is to say, but it's because of its origins. The word tea comes from the Chinese word te, which means tea. It was spread when English traders traded with the Fujian region of China, and they called the product tea. If you're Chinese, however, or you speak Chinese, you'll realize that this isn't the word that is used in Chinese for tea, or Mandarin Chinese at least. They use cha, which is the second word that every single language can use, except for like a few, for tea. There are 2 words for tea in every language, except for basically Polish, Lithuanian, some of the other languages around there, and Zulu and Burmese. Burmese, I think, has a native word for tea, so does Zulu, and then Polish, Lithuanian, Belarusian all use a word they stole from Latin, and Latin stole from tea, so it's just herbata. And this is why there are only 2 words for tea in every language. Let's look at the word orange. Orange has possibly the most chaotic etymology of any word that I know of. It originates from Sanskrit naranga, which means orange tree, which then got stolen into Persian narang, which then got stolen into Arabic naranj, which then got stolen into Old Italian narantia. Now, that kind of sounds like orange, but when it got borrowed into Old French was when it really started to sound like orange. In Old French, the une narange, the N at the start of orange, narange, kind of got assumed to be part of une. So instead of becoming une narange, it became une orange. And then that got borrowed into Middle English as orange, which we now know as orange. Lastly, probably the weirdest one here, assassin. Where does the word assassin come from? It comes from the Arabic word hashashin, which means people who smoke hash. It's a bit of a random choice for a word for assassins. But essentially, there was a group of people in 1090 called the Hashashin, or Nizari Ismailis, who were known for assassinating people that they didn't like. Hence, the word Hashashin kind of became used as a derogatory catch-all term for assassins. This word was taken from Arabic and got turned into the Italian word assassino, which became the word assassin in English. Acknowledgements. Kind of a short presentation, but I'd like to thank my Masterworks advisors, my aunt Elizabeth Sarasola, Pete Scott, and Brad Cotter for being incredibly helpful in actually making my essay readable and not just be a 14-year-old rambling about something that could be or could not be adjacent to languages. I'd like to thank Jennifer Hendrickson for scaring me into doing my work. I'd like to thank my brother Storm for being an absolute nuisance. I'd like to thank my parents for trying to tell me stuff that I either ignored or forgot. And I'd like to thank Ema for not threateningly at all, kindly asking to be in my acknowledgements. And lastly, thank you to ChatGPT for writing my essay. I'm just kidding. Questions?
Well done, Mr. Beals. Learned a lot, and I think we'll learn more even through these questions. So off to your advisory team.
Thank you, Mr. Beals. Your advisors couldn't attend in person. They're streaming in. So on behalf of the panel, we have a few questions for you. Because there was a lot in your Masterworks paper that you didn't talk about here. It was a tough choice what to put into the presentation. But before we do that, I'm going to give you something called a portmanteau, a made-up word by putting 2 words together. I'm going to call it brain squeeze, because that's how it was like working on this paper with you. It was an incredibly interesting journey. I love the conversations we had, so many curious things, and you can take a word like bear or tea and make it genuinely interesting. So a couple of things, and these are in no particular order, but maybe I can start with this feeling I had. I arrived at this school about a year ago and started to get back into working with young people. And there was a point where I said to you, I'm feeling kind of skibbity now. And that was the reaction you gave me. And then you gave me this marvelous explanation why I can't say that. Can you share that with everybody?
So there are just some words like skibbity that just aren't funny anymore, if you know what I mean. Like the word skibbity is just one of those words that doesn't stick around. And there's kind of 3 reasons for it. Like, for example, 1, the word skibbity, it's really, really intrusive. Like, to say it, it just sounds way too funny. It's not like it's a funny word, it just sounds funny, and it doesn't really make sense to incorporate it in a normal conversation unless you're trying to be ironic, which is the second reason it didn't stick around. Because people didn't really use that word in a non-ironic context. Like, it doesn't make sense to use the word skibbity in a non-ironic context. And unless you're part of a very certain age group or you're an adult, you wouldn't use that word in a non-ironic context. And that brings me to part 3 of why that word didn't stick around, because it got used by adults. And that is this. and that's basically why words like that don't stick around. Because as soon as an adult says it, it becomes not marginalized to a single group anymore, and instead, now everybody's using it. And it's not fun to use that word anymore because it doesn't separate you from anyone. And on top of being ironic and just way too intrusive in a conversation, that word just didn't make sense to use anymore, so nobody uses it anymore unless they're like a very certain age group of people who weren't old enough to figure out that we don't say that word anymore, and were around when that word was used for a brief amount of time unironically. And 2, yeah. I don't know what the second part was.
Thank you. It reminds me of another really interesting thing, a metaphor you were developing in your paper, and you used this metaphor of a balloon to talk about things like that. Can you tell everybody a little bit about that, please?
So you can kind of view language, the relationship between language and culture is like a balloon, right? The language is really what separates the culture from dispersing out into the world around it. Like the air inside a balloon is the culture, and as soon as you get rid of the language for it, there's less, like, aside from like very distinct traditions, there's not a lot that makes it different from the other cultures around it. So by, for example, you pop that balloon by, if everybody speaks that language, then it's not special anymore, and it's not holding, that language, that culture in. Or if you try to assimilate it, that can also get rid of culture. And there's like a lot of times that this happened in history. Namely, like if you think of residential schools, those were designed to get indigenous children to stop speaking their languages, which is really bad because once you do that, it becomes harder to participate in cultural stuff, and you lose a lot of culture. And another way that this is happening is borrowing marginalized lingo. Like for example, if you say slay in a context where you're not part of the LGBTQ community, unironically, you are taking that word away from the LGBTQ community, and you're not making it kind of special anymore. And that word is not that word no longer becomes the thing that is holding that culture in. But luckily, the LGBT community is very good at making new words, so yeah.
Well, thank you. I think that was a really important illustration of how subtly we can appropriate or even destroy other cultures just by, me doing things like trying to say skibbity when I shouldn't do it, right? I have something else. This is a quote from a very famous person, and I thought it might be a bit of advice. When we were working on your paper, I mean, your content was brilliant, and we talked a lot about getting this well structured and taking the time to make your case because you had so much to share. So I'm going to do my best impersonation of this person, and maybe you can tell us a little bit. You had that slide about subject, verb, object, and that kind of thing.
Oh.
So you might. Let's see if I can do this, and if you can recognize this, right?
Go back to that.
Yeah, go back to your SBO kind of slide there. Oh, yeah, there we are. Right. So
His word order isn't here.
let's see if I can do this. Patience you must have. So, advice from Yoda for you. So that seems weird to us because I would say, Max, you need to have some more patience here while we're working. Yoda says it very differently. Can you explain Yoda's way of talking using this?
So that word order is object, subject, verb. So in that sense, it's patience is the object, Subject is you, so patience you must have, and then have is the verb. And the thing about that word order is it's not really used by anybody except like a tribe in the Amazon. It's just the least common word order, and I don't know why. I just know that it's the least common word order in like 1, maybe 2 languages use it.
Yeah, we talked a bit about that and how that was a way of making Yoda really stand out, because words we could understand, but in an order that made them seem just a little bit strange for us. So last question here, and you kind of hinted at it at a couple of places, but can you tell us a little bit more about this idea of these large language models that are out there? You've talked about Proto-Indo-European and things.
Oh, you're not talking about large language models, but like
not
families?
large language models. Pardon me, families rather. I'm getting your ChatGPT thing mixed up.
Yeah. So what he's talking about are the idea of like macro families and deep ancestry within language families, which is kind of like a debated topic in linguistics, because for one thing, the recognizable signs that a language is related to one another kind of disappear after 6,000 years, which is the reason that we were able to tell that languages like Russian, Hindi, Greek are all related. But beyond that, we don't know really what's related to English or not, or in Proto-Indo-European. So there's a lot of families like Uralic, which is also spoken in Europe and includes languages like Finnish, Estonian, and Hungarian, they're not related, and there's a couple ways that you can figure out whether like these groups are possibly related. And this is kind of a sensitive subject within linguists because of a few reasons. One might be nationalism. 2 is just because we can't really prove any of this. So one way that you can look at this is, hold on, I'm going to skip ahead a whole bunch. You can use genetics. Let me just find this slide. This one. This is a very bad image of it, but essentially what's going on here is that there are 2 types of genetics. This is Y haplogroup. So it's like your father's father's father like line back far enough that you can give it a type of like a symbol. Like for example, all the European people originated from some guy over here who became everybody's like great 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 grandfather, except it's really complicated, but essentially you can mark different Y chromosomes with this. So right here we see that there's the N. I don't think anyone can see that, but right here it says N, and right here it says R. So the thing is, these 2 haplogroups aren't very closely related. In fact, N is actually more closely related to this one. This N is the Uralic haplogroup with Hungarian, Finnish, and all those languages, and R is the one with all the Indo-European languages. But the thing is, N is actually more closely related to O and is a direct like sibling of the O haplogroup. And the thing about the O-Y haplogroup is that that's the one that's spoken in like that is common in China, Japan, Korea, parts of Southeast Asia, and even like Polynesian peoples, like as you can see here. So they're not, as far as we know, Uralic languages and Sino-Tibetan languages, and a lot of these other languages aren't related. But if we were to follow genetics, it would look like they were, like very distantly, like tens of thousands of years ago. But if we were to follow Y haplogroup, just like similarity in location-based data, we could figure out, it would make more sense to find that Finnish, Uralic languages, and Indo-European languages are more closely related. But the problem with this is if you're just purely going off of this, it will tell you that Indo-European languages and the R haplogroup are related to the Q haplogroup, their best sibling, which is like most South American and parts of North American indigenous groups. And the thing is, that is very unlikely. But anyways, that was kind of a long rant, so any other questions?
Okay, we're going to go on to more questions from the floor, but I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned this a little bit with residential schools, but what do you think about the influence of globalization and the prevalence of English, how it's going to affect the history of words?
So yeah, English is kind of a problem here. I think that's kind of evident. But it's not necessarily English, but just like larger languages like Mandarin, English, lots of European languages like French especially, which are replacing like a lot of like African languages because of colonization, and so is English. But what they do is they get bigger, and speakers of the smaller languages often like decide not to learn their native language but to learn English because it gives them more opportunities. And this is bad because then we lose culture, like the balloon metaphor I said.
Yep, great answer.
Is it okay if I sit down? I'm about to faint.
Yeah, go ahead. You got a white stool there.
Great presentation.
No, I'm fine.
I was wondering what inspired you to do this master
I
for
think
your
I've just always
master?
liked languages.
Okay.
You know, like, sorry. I've always just liked languages, you know. But one time in like 7th grade or something, I think I was like trying to learn Spanish for some reason because I thought it would be easy. And it's not really, it wasn't really. But I kind of just discovered a lot of like this branching of the Romance family, and I don't particularly like the Romance family of languages, but you know, I learned a lot. Yeah, can we end the questions? I'm about to like die. Yeah.
Let me take a break. Hey, let's take a break. Can we wrap up? Okay.
Yeah. Well, considering what time it is, I think that would be wise. And we are having an interesting day here because the grade sixes are going to be staying for the experience IPS. So the grade five and the grade sixes will be here. We're going to have
No.
lunch and then some games, get to know everybody. And then before that, though, everyone has an off-island 12:33. So there is a bus going to be, the IPS bus will be leaving to get those guys off to the ferry. And the grade sixes will be on the 155. Okay? So, who's on cleanup, Jen? Hi, hold up. So Cassiopeia is going to be on cleanup today. I'm also wanting to tell you a little bit about tomorrow. So you may or may not have known that we have moved the Cheakamus Trail crew over to what the 6s and 9s are doing.
So Max is fine. He just got a little lightheaded, a bit of a dizzy spell, and hasn't been able to pull himself back together. So unfortunately, he's not going to be here for this moment. But it gives us all great pleasure to say that Max Beals has fulfilled all the requirements of the Masterworks and then some. Congratulations. All right.
So, my lovelies, we will be dismissing in just a minute. The grade 9s, I'd like you guys to stick around just for a little photo shoot after this. And you can go get ice cream, it's fine. And